Welcome to the 5 o'clock show. It's time for Common Sense. Now, it's Katz and Cosby with John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby, standing for truth, justice, and the American way, bringing common sense to the world. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby.
Should I stay or should I go?
Well, should I stay or should I go, John Katz? That seems to be the message.
That's the question in Washington.
It definitely
and all
is.
the people that were against Biden 2 days ago, all of a sudden say, well, I think he's not a bad guy.
Yeah, surprise, surprise.
So, they want to be the leaders of the pack.
Yeah, I think we have a song like that.
That's when I fell for leader of the pack.
Yeah, you know, it's so funny, John. And we have, of course, Judge Richard Weinberg. We also have Craig Eaton with us here on Katz and Cosby. But, John, you are so right. It's like they're blowing with the wind because now they're realizing they can't get rid of him.
What's the song? Blowing
That's
with
right.
the
We're
wind.
Peter Paul Mary.
Yes, yeah,
Peter
right.
Paul Mary.
Yeah, look, this is named that tune today. This is it.
We're going to be in the music business.
I know. We're going to bring in
Instead of the
Cousin
news
Brucey.
business.
Right.
Well, Craig Eaton,
Yes.
you haven't been here in a week.
Yes, I have.
What say you about everything going on?
You know, I read all the papers every day, and it just frustrates me what's happening and how Hunter and Joe Biden's brother are getting away with everything. And it's amazing how the country, you know, is this the best that we can bring to the table for elections?
I understand that Hunter, is a bright kid.
Yes.
And he is controlling who sees his father and who doesn't see his father.
Imagine he's the gatekeeper.
Which is a scary thought.
That's
a scary thought.
And Republicans, there are a number of people, you guys, who've come out and said, what information is he getting? Because there are some reports that he's been involved in some of these intel briefings. I'm sorry, I didn't think he
Where's
had
his
intel.
clearance? Where's his
Exactly,
clearance?
Judge Weinberg, exactly.
But, you know, we were talking before about the doctors and President Biden, and it's obvious that they're not going to have him go to a neurologist or see any other doctors because once they see them, once it's out, you can't put it back in the box.
Yeah, they don't want him to see him.
Because then you're lying, and then you're saying, no, he didn't see them. So they just ignore it and pretend it's not real. And hopefully it goes away, but it's not going away.
And the big news is, of course, that the White House put out this letter from the doctor, the official doctor there at the White House, Biden's doctor, who, by the way, has some ties to the Biden family. That makes, lots of questions. And they said the only time he's seen a neurologist are during his annual physical exams. That to me, my first thought was that's medical malpractice because right after the debate, was not the time for the physical. It was in February. So he's not going to get another one till next February when the whole world's saying, give me a break.
Rita, don't you take solace in the fact that the White House has just announced that if reelected, President Biden will fill out his 4-year term.
Is he aware of that?
How?
How?
Can you take that? How's he going to make it to January?
That's
He's not going to make it to
amazing.
January.
January's a long time.
Yeah, it's amazing.
He's progressively getting worse. It's obvious.
And Craig, I agree with you. They don't want him to get tested by a neurologist. You would have thought after the debate, is there any way that you would say, honey, if it was my father or my husband or anyone, I'd say, you need to see a neurologist, but they are purposely avoiding it if you believe what they're saying.
It's political gamemanship. That's what it is. It's malpractice, medical malpractice, but it's political gamemanship.
Well, I understand we have Mr. Dershowitz on.
Absolutely. We have Professor Alan Dershowitz, of course, Harvard Law School Professor Emeritus. Professor Dershowitz, let's also get to the 25th Amendment because some people are bringing this up. How does that work and is that conceivable?
It's not conceivable because the 25th Amendment was drafted to allow the party in power to make the decision to remove a president. It needs the approval of the cabinet. It's just not going to happen. It needs the approval of the vice president. It's just not going to happen. So the 25th Amendment is really off the table. The only time the 25th Amendment would operate is if the president really was demonstrably incapacitated, like with a heart attack or something like that, or a stroke, and he didn't have the capacity to make a decision to leave office, then the decision could be made for him. But I think the 25th Amendment's really off the table. The question is, will he voluntarily leave? If he doesn't voluntarily leave, I don't believe the Democrats are going to push him out. That would destroy the party and make it an absolute certainty that they would lose the election. So it's up to Biden. My prediction is he will not be the nominee when it comes to November, and probably Kamala Harris will be the nominee. But we're in the realm of speculation at this point.
Yeah.
Well, Professor, we were talking just before you came on. I don't know if you heard us. The fact is that Hunter Biden is acting as the gatekeeper. He decides who sees his father.
Yeah, I mean, if that's true, that's a serious problem. Obviously, he's a convicted felon, and we'll see what his sentence is. All of these things are factors. Look, we're in a bad situation. We're in a bad situation. There's never been a more important time for America to have great leadership. France is falling apart. It's returning to the 1930s, where the only two parties that are in power are either the communists or the fascists. The center party has been diminished. In England, we're seeing the Labour Party win, and suddenly they're turning against Israel. Not the prime minister, but the people he's appointing to subordinate positions. Apparently, recent reports say that the Labour Party has changed Britain's view on the ICC. Remember, the ICC, International Criminal Court, was going after Israel, and Britain was on Israel's side. Now Britain may be against Israel and against the United States. So the world's in turmoil. There's never been a time when we need coherent leadership, and I just wish we had it. But we're not going to have it, for the immediate future until the election.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, also in the middle of all this, because of all these questions after the debate with the president, there has been an effort to get that tape. We understand, I think it's audio and video. Some people have said it's video too, of the interview with Robert Hur, who's the special counsel who interviewed, President Biden about the classified documents. There have been efforts now to sue because Garland hasn't released it. I think they should release it. The American public should see what they determined. He was an elderly, well-meaning old man who couldn't be prosecuted.
It's not even a close question. There is no conceivable argument for not releasing that video or audio tape. The Democrats say we don't want it released because the only reason that the Republicans want it released is to use in a campaign ad. Okay, that's called the First Amendment. That's called freedom of speech. The American public has the right to see their president under questioning. There's absolutely no question it will win. If there is a lawsuit, it has to be brought very quickly on an expedited basis, but I believe that it will prevail. I don't see any conceivable reason under any statute or any rule of law for keeping the American public from seeing their president being questioned in a deposition.
How long could that take, though? I mean, that's the other question, because we've got the election around the corner. I think the American public should see it.
Before the election. Remember, Jack Smith is saying there should be full disclosure of everything before the election. We should get Trump convicted. Well, that's difficult because you have to have a trial. This is not difficult. If I were a judge, I'd order these the audio and video, if there is a video, released tomorrow. And that's what should happen. I don't know why that lawsuit hasn't been filed more quickly and more expeditiously, but this is an easy lawsuit to win.
Yeah, I agree. Judge Weinberg.
Al, I agree with you on that. I want to ask you, switching gears, I want to talk to you about Judge Merchan and the implications of the Supreme Court decisions with respect to Biden, official acts by Trump in terms of immunity, as well as the unanimous verdict. What are your thoughts about those two cases? Because Andy McCarthy had a couple of great columns in National Review in which he says, based on his reading of those decisions, Merchan, if he had any intellectual moral honesty, would acquit Trump.
He's absolutely right. Andy is absolutely right. His columns are both brilliant, both correct. And there's no doubt in my mind, even before the most recent decisions, that there should have been a unanimous verdict. There should have been specificity as to what has to be found. But after the Supreme Court decision, both on immunity and on three opinions, actually,
the Fisher as well, the overreach by prosecutors, right?
Yeah, if I'm a prosecutor at this point, I think the only ethical thing to do is to drop the case. But it's not going to happen because this was a political case from the beginning. There was never a case. Now the Supreme Court has weighed in and made it clear that even if there was a case previously, which there wasn't, there is no case. There is no case today. And so I do think that when this appeal is brought, and the question is how quickly it can be brought, I don't think Marchand, even before the appeal, has really any legal option but to dismiss. Now, he's already delayed the sentencing, indicating that he knows he has to consider this issue. If he is to do the right thing, he's going to dismiss this indictment. But at the very least, a new trial with a new instruction based on these new Supreme Court decisions. But I just don't think that's going to happen with Marchand.
Professor, did you hear the Jim Stevenson? Oh, was it Jim?
Oh, yeah, Bill Stevenson, the ex-husband of Jill,
that Senator Biden reported him to the Department of Justice and made the Department of Justice come in, arrest him, and put him in handcuffs because he was 8 days late on his taxes.
I never heard that.
Well, that's the testimony. I will send you. I'll send you the tape. The tape later.
But the question is, the Justice Department shouldn't be taking orders from senators in any event.
Well, in Delaware they do.
Yeah, no.
It's a small town.
Don't start me on Delaware.
Okay.
A lot of Delaware, and that is a home cooking state. You get all the advantages in that state.
Home cooking. I'll remember that phrase, home cooking.
Yeah.
Professor Dershowitz, thank you. It's great to have you here. Thank you so much. And we were talking about the leader of the pack and shall I stay or shall I go? Our greatest hits today. Joining us now is Mark Penn, the great pollster. Mark, some of these new polls that just came out, the ones that I have all seen are showing Trump ahead. There was an Emerson poll that was a little closer, 46 to 43, but clearly he got a bump after the debate, and Biden got, no surprise, a drop.
Well, look, no question. In my poll, I saw Biden's job approval drop to 40 from 44, and I saw the percentage of people who thought that he's too old to serve another term go to 74%, from I think 63 or 64. So there's no question. And then my horse race was Trump plus 4. I think all these polls are showing when you look at them, really between 0 and 7, the average I think is somewhere around the plus 4. I don't think there's any question that, frankly, Trump was winning before the debate, which is why the Biden team thought the debate would be a brilliant idea. And it was a brilliant idea, but it was a brilliant idea for the Trump campaign.
What do you think is going to happen this week and next week, Mark Penn? I mean, it seems like obviously we were talking about even blowing in the wind. It's like, Schumer and Nadler and a whole bunch of others were like, oh, they're concerned, but now it's changed.
They all wanted him to step down.
But today
they said, oh, we're supporting the president.
Party divided. A party divided cannot stand, right? Well, and so there's no question that this, you've got to go out, you've got to drop out now. When Biden said, I'm not dropping out, was not going anywhere, right? I think the president has won this fight because the Democrats realized it was impractical. They were not going to have some new primary. Harris was not necessarily going to be a better nominee. And besides, whether she was or wouldn't, the president was not going to go willingly. And what were they going to do? Invoke the 25th Amendment? That just wasn't happening.
Judge Weinberg.
And Mark, also the Emerson poll also pointed out that Biden did it better against Trump than Harris did against Trump. So she's not the savior for the party.
Well, look, Harris right now, if I look at it on favorable ratings, I think Trump is at 46. Biden is at 39, and I think Harris is at 38. how would Harris really do if she were the nominee? Who knows? Because you don't know. How would you ever have imagined Governor Hochul could win re-election for governor when she was an unknown lieutenant governor from upstate New York? So you don't really know what would happen. Or Hochul could have been a disaster, and Harris could be a disaster. I think they all decided that Biden is the disaster they know.
I think that's exactly right. That's well said.
What's going to happen with the media too, Mark? What do you think? Because the New York Times just came out and said Biden's embarrassing himself. So they're renewing their calls.
They doubled down.
They doubled down. And they were the first ones. Remember, yep. John, who came out and said, editorial board, they're saying he should resign. What do you see? How do you see even like in the press room, they're still wanting answers about, when did the Parkinson expert come in? When did they seem very skeptical of this White House?
I think the press is going to be tougher on the president. I think that they realized that there was a big story going on. It was right in front of them. And they were misled, and they're somewhat angry about it, and they're somewhat, they're kind of getting back into Woodward Bernstein mode a little bit.
Mark, but let me ask you, misled or didn't want to report on it? Because I've been in that press room many a time, and you can ask what you want. I mean, if you look at it, we all saw it wasn't to me such a surprise at the debate. Where were they all the months before?
Well, as I love to quote, these are not the droids you're looking for, meaning that, of course they are, and of course it's right in front of you. And I think that it was sort of a combination. They bought the idea that this was all right-wing attacks, and therefore they shouldn't touch it, and it couldn't be true. And at the same time, again,
are they that stupid, Mark? Are they that stupid?
They are that mistrusting. That is, as a class, those journalists are so mistrusting of the right. Yeah. I mean, look, it was right in front of them, right? The president wasn't doing interviews. It's not, we used to send President Clinton down to the briefing room. President Trump used to just saunter down to the briefing room any day he felt like it. He wasn't doing interviews. He was doing only scripted speeches. It was obvious in front of them, and now they feel somewhat like fools, right? And so they're going to take it out not on themselves, but they're going to take it out, I think, a little bit more on the White House. I think you're going to see more aggressive reporting from here on in.
Craig Eaton?
Yeah, Mark, I'll tell you, I watched the interview with George Stephanopoulos the other night, and I was really surprised. I mean, I expected George to be throwing him softballs. And he was very hard on the president. I mean, he kept pointing the same question and asking the same question over and over again. I was impressed with that. I think you hit it right on the head. I think the press is now frustrated because his medical condition has gotten progressively worse each and every week. And it's going to hit a point where it's going to be a point of no return. And then what do we do as a country?
Well, I try to avoid being a doctor.
Yeah.
I have two daughters who are. So I don't really know what's going on. I think the judge, I think what you said about Stephanopoulos, I would say he threw medium balls. He was persistent. He pushed all the way down to, look, are you going to take a real test and make it public or not? To which the president said, not.
Yeah, right. He dodged and weaved.
Well, he eventually got the answer that the president was not going to do that. And he kind of knew the president was going to say that. So that was an example of kind of tougher journalism. It's not like he said, well, we didn't really look as much as your health. Stephanopoulos didn't say, should we look a little bit more about what you said about your business dealings with your son? He didn't go there, right? He just, he stayed within the one lane and was a lot tougher. And that's kind of where it looks like the press is going.
Anything else you want to say to America?
Well, our poll came back last week, and Americans, Americans are really feeling it about the economy. I am really surprised the extent to which neither campaign, and I think Trump is talking almost exclusively about immigration, but most people are just upset about inflation, the cost of living, the cost of food, the cost of housing, cost of gasoline, And I'm surprised that nobody has what we would have had with Clinton, a 4-point plan for how we're going to reduce, living costs in America, because that is what really has people upset.
You're absolutely right. President Biden, he says he can take care of the poor, take care of the middle class. He made the poor poorer, doubled the price of gas, increased food by 30-40%, increased the price of buying a home. I mean, it's just a disaster.
And that's really what has, that is really what has the American voter upset, that the cost of middle-class life, which had been dropping for like 20 years, right, and really took a sharp upturn in all of the basics.
Mark Penn, me and you were Democrats at one time. I think you're still a Democrat. Me and you were Democrats at one time. Has President Biden done anything right?
Well, I won't answer that. I will just say that he started off right on Israel, and then he went seriously off course.
He started off wrong day number one by destroying the oil industry and doubling the price and tripling the price of gasoline.
And opening up the border by rescinding all of Trump's executive orders.
Mark Penn, we love you. And can we bring back Bill Clinton for a third term?
I wish we could.
I wish we could. Well, thank you so much, and we'll catch up with you again real soon, Mark.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Mark.
Let's take a break right now. We're going to come back. The market's all over the place. The Fed Chairman Powell was on today, and what the heck did he do? We're going to find out. Steve Moore will be right on right after the break.
A common sense recap of the day's biggest stories. It's John Catsimatidis and Rita Cosby. Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Well, we're back. What's going on now? Let's talk about the economy. What's going on with the economy? Well, the Fed Chairman, Mr. Powell, was on talking to Congress before the Senate. And we got with us Steve Moore, the second most important, next to Larry Kudlow. Kudlow is the number one most important.
Steve Moore's number two.
Steve Moore's number two.
No, you're number one. You're number one.
Steve, what the heck is going on? What's going to happen with the economy? You and Larry believe that interest rates will stay up. I believe interest rates will come down because you're going to break all the banks. You're going to break the whole real estate industry.
Well, I think you're probably right about that. The question is, should they come down? I mean, inflation has come down. But what the real issue right now, I think, has shifted from inflation. I mean, it's still a problem for sure for people buying groceries and gas and things. But the economy, I've been talking to a lot of businessmen and women who make things, in construction and manufacturing. Of course, John, you're right there in the middle of the economy. But so many of them are telling me just in the last couple of months they feel like the economy has shifted into a lower gear, and that is being echoed by the official numbers that show a few months ago the economy was growing at 3%. Now it's back to below 1.5%, which is pretty measly. So, John, I'll throw that right back to you. I mean, you see the economy every day. You feel it every day with your businesses. Do you feel the slowdown coming?
I feel people are scared because there's a problem coming if they don't lower the interest rates. The whole real estate industry is going to have a big problem, and the real estate industry is going to give the banks a problem. That's not going to help the overall economy by worrying about inflation. The heck with inflation right now. Let's get country moving.
I think what we've got here is a vote for a rate cut, and so I think that's Rita. I think that we've got the vote for the rate cut there, and look, I'm open-minded to that because I think the economy really needs a lift. Now, I got to tell you this though: if you want a lift, I wrote a piece in the New York Post late last week on this. You got to vote for Trump because Trump will expand oil production. He will cut taxes, Rita. He will get rid of a lot of the wasteful government spending in Washington. We'll have better trade deals. So, I think a temporary fix, John, might be to lower rates, but I don't think that's the ultimate solution. And the ultimate solution here has to be better monetary policy, better fiscal policy, more fiscal discipline, and making sure that we don't raise taxes. Because Biden's whole agenda, he said this in the debate, if I'm reelected, I'm going to raise taxes through the roof. Well, John, that's not going to get the economy healthy.
Now, I got a better one for you, okay? I got a better one for you, Steve Moore.
I'm ready.
Some of the states, they want to vote that migrants should not be voting.
Ridiculous.
Or not voting in federal elections. Yeah. And guess what? President Biden went out there and says, I'm going to veto the bill if Congress passes that migrants can't vote. What kind of crap is that?
No, this is called, you're exactly right, John and Rita. This is called the SAVE Act, and it's a bill to basically have, penalties against and make it illegal for non-citizens to vote. By the way, the Constitution says that only citizens can vote. So this is just following the Constitution.
And I apologize. I don't want to sound like Mark Levin yelling and screaming.
But
that was called passion.
That doesn't start till 6 o'clock. Yeah, at 6 o'clock.
He'd be a good role model.
Our ratings are 30-40% above his.
Yeah. Well, that's why I love being on your station. But, I think that the idea that illegal immigrants are going to vote, let's put it like this, Rita. Are you there, Rita?
I sure am.
Okay, you've been quiet today.
I'm taking it all in.
Here it is. So there's 8 to 10 million illegal immigrants into the country. We don't know exactly, but maybe
10 million votes. That's the way they look at it.
Yeah. And let's say only 10%. Let's say only 10% of those illegal immigrants are voting, which is probably a lot higher than that. That's 1 million votes. The last 2 elections have been decided by less than 100,000 votes. So they are
And look what happened in Wisconsin.
Biden has opened the borders. He wants these people to vote.
Drop boxes in Wisconsin. Explain it to the normal people out there. Don't know what we're talking about those drop boxes.
Well, we don't know who's filling out the ballots. We don't look. You're going to have John Fund. You know John Fund. You've got to have him on your show. He is the expert.
We should have him.
Yeah, we should. He actually would be great.
We've had John.
He knows way more about this stuff than I do. He's the world's expert. He wrote a book called Stealing Elections. And look, if this is a clean election, I think Trump will win. Handily, but
it's not going to be a clean election. It's not going to be a clean election. Yeah. Craig, you lived in Brooklyn. You were the GOP chairman of Brooklyn for 10 years. They stole every election from you. What happened?
They stole every election. Friends of mine went into the voting booth, right? Into the polling site. And people would come up to him and he would vote. And then they would say, oh, your wife didn't vote today and your son didn't vote today. You want to vote for them? I mean, this is what happens. There's no control. You have a board of elections that trains these poll workers, and half the times the people who are the poll workers, either they speak Russian or Asian or whatever, and the people that are voting speak Russian or Asian, and they're talking. Nobody knows what they're saying. The elections are getting stolen right out from under us in every city and every state around this country.
I don't care who people vote for. I just want an honest election.
You have to have an honest election.
That's what the American people want, an honest election.
Yes, they have to.
Well, I'm from Chicago, so I know a lot about it.
Oh, you don't know anything about it.
I have a great idea.
What about last election there?
I got a great idea. Why don't we have a rule where you have to have a photo ID when you're voting? Isn't that a brilliant idea?
Exactly.
And how about no drop boxes?
Here's another one for you guys.
No drop boxes.
I'm old.
We got 30 seconds. We got to take a break. Go ahead.
You have to vote on election day.
Yes.
And by the way, short term, you got to work within the rules you've got. So here's a message for the GOP. They got to hurry up and get out, too.
Yeah, there should be no mail-in ballots unless you're a veteran.
Steve Moore.
I agree.
Steve Moore, I was disappointed you weren't on last Saturday. And I'm hoping you'll
run
on this Saturday.
How
can you take a week off?
What's
that? Take the week off when you die. Okay?
Yeah, that's next life, not this life.
Have a nice...
We'll be back on Saturday, 1 to 3. More money, baby.
Have a nice evening.
Thank you.
And we're going to take a break right now. No, we got the headline news from sponsored by Goya.
Sponsored by Goya. Here's Rita Cosby.
And as we were talking here at the top of Cats and Cosby, House Democrats are divided over the future of President Biden's candidacy. Tennessee Congressman Steve Cohen emerged from a closed-door meeting with fellow Democrats to say they are not on the same page or even in the same book. That's why we paid leader of the pack and also shall I stay or shall I go? Meanwhile, the president's surviving son, Hunter, here's some new news on this, Craig. I know you were talking about Hunter earlier. He is withdrawing his request for a new trial in his federal gun case. He was convicted of 3 counts related to lying about his drug addiction to obtain a firearm. And lastly, guys, over 2 million people are still without power in Texas in the sweltering heat following Hurricane Beryl. Crews hope to restore service for nearly 1 million customers, hopefully by the end of tomorrow. And those are the hot headlines from Goya.
You're commuting home with Katz and Cosby. Now, here's John Katzimatidis and Rita Cosby on 77 WABC.
And we are back here on Katz and Cosby. And joining us now here in studio is the co-chair of the Youth Advisory Council for the Republican National Committee. He's also a superstar. He's 19 years old, but he has done more than...
18 years old.
No, 19, right?
18.
Oh, well, 18. Sid said 19. We're going to have to go back at that. Okay, so 18 years old. Has not even finished high school.
Is he allowed to drink in New York?
Been in Alabama where he's from. I think he can, right? All right. Anyway, Brylan Hollihan is joining us. He's also the author of a brand new book. It's called One Generation Away, Why Now is the Time to Restore American Freedom. 18 years old. And now you are the co-chair. This is the first time that the Republican National Committee has had a group that's going to Gen Z. You're spearheading this. Trump is also now leading in some of the latest polls. Talk about how this whole thing came about. This is awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here. Really appreciate the opportunity. The book released this morning, so we had to come to WABC. It's an honor to have the opportunity to talk to you all.
By the way, you are by far, I think, one of the best dressed guys in the studio.
Well,
We've got some well-dressed guys here, but you're pretty dapper.
It's been a long day in media, so we had to enjoy it. But we started this RNC Youth Advisory Council because it was a priority of the RNC and President Trump to make sure we're reaching out to Gen Z directly. A Republican presidential candidate hasn't won the youth vote since 2003. That's a long time. That was before I was born. And we're trying to make sure that we make an effort this time to actually have conversations with young people. And it's paying off. As you mentioned, President Trump's winning in polls with the youth vote by 8 points. That's exceeding the margin of error. 8 points is massive this month out from the election. We still have more time. We still have more work to do with the convention next week, but it's looking pretty positive, Rita.
Why do you think he's doing so well with Gen Z this go-round? Yeah. And a Republican this go-round?
Absolutely. So the most recent conversation I had with President Trump, he came over to Alabama, did a fundraiser. We were talking backstage, just waving his hands in the air, the typical Trump talk. He said, Brylan, what can we do to win the youth vote? And I said, Mr. President, 2 things. First of all, be authentic. And second of all, come to mainstream social media platforms. Now, be authentic was a little slight at Biden because he attempted to get on TikTok, attempted to get on Instagram, but he read for teleprompter. He would say, good morning, Gen Z. Pause. Thank you for having me. Pause. You know, it wasn't natural. It wasn't. It was too scripted. And my peers didn't, receive well with that. Clearly, he's not winning the youth vote, but Trump can. And Trump is authentic. Trump's genuine. He's likable. He seems down to earth. That's why we get along with him so well. And so President Trump listened to that. He got on Instagram. He got on TikTok. He now has the fastest growing account in TikTok history. And he's making major moves. Again, he's having conversations with us. He's reaching out to us. He can film a 15-second video, post it on TikTok tonight, and get it in front of hundreds of millions of people. In the past, Republican would film a 30-second TV ad, spend millions of dollars, get it in front of a certain audience. Gen Z isn't watching cable TV. He can get a message to us for free in front of our eyeballs as they scroll in front of TikTok. And it's working, clearly.
How about after the debate?
Yeah.
Because we've seen some new polls. Has there been reaction among Gen Z after the Biden debacle?
I will say that I was at church youth camp when the debate happened, and I had a little round table watch party with a few of my friends upstairs, and they were terrified of the man that they saw on that TV screen, Joe Biden. He mumbled, he stumbled across the debate stage. The fact that that man has had the nuclear code for 3 years is startling, Rita, frankly. And my generation doesn't want that. First of all, he's out of touch. He said yesterday he attempted to have a safe recovery interview. He called onto the Morning Joe, this, DNC-friendly show, thinking that he could kind of salvage this. And Rita, you're not going to believe what he said. He said the DNC elites are attempting to kick him off the ballot. Rita, Joe Biden has been in Washington, D.C. for 45 years. 45 years. He's the definition of a DNC elite. What's he talking about? He's out of touch.
That's 2.5 times your life. You realize that?
Yes.
You realize that? By the way, you have a great story of how you started.
Ma'am.
You got to share it with John and the judge
Absolutely.
and Craig here. You started, was it age 10 or 11?
Yes, you're exactly right. Yeah, so I got interested in politics at age 10, started paying attention to those fiery Trump-Hillary debates in the 2016 election. It was the next year at 11, I finally said, listen, our country's going on a bad path. I had said for months, my parents will handle it, my grandparents will handle it, the adults have got this, it'll be okay, because that's what you're taught growing up. The adults didn't have it. And so I decided that, hey, my generation's going to step up. I'm going to get involved in politics. Started with commentary, now obviously doing the Youth Advisory Council, and it's so exciting. It's amazing.
That is amazing. By the way, I thought, like I did a lot, Judge, when you hear him, don't you feel like an underachiever? He's got a show, too. He's got a podcast show where he interviews everybody.
Listen, I want to know, you have to be 30 years old to be a United States Senator, so you have a couple of years. But you can't get elected to Congress at 25.
Oh, that's good to know.
So I'll run your campaign.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
What's ahead for you? I mean, are you thinking about that, too? Are you thinking about politics?
So I get that question a good amount. We had a launch party back in my hometown Sunday night, had 500 people in attendance. I gave this whole long speech. We took Q&As. The very first question, it wasn't about the book. The first question was actually, when are you going to run for president? And I said, well, it's an honor to be asked that. But I'll say this, Rita. We're thinking, about the future, thinking about where we can go with things. And right now I'd love to stay in a commentary role. I'd love to continue doing this and actually talking directly with young people. I'm not turning down political office, but like you said, we're a few years away from even being eligible to run. So.
How about the state legislature?
He's got your whole plan there. The judge has your whole plan.
You better hurry up if you want him to be your campaign manager.
That's right. That's right.
He's going to be retiring to Long Island soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we are so excited to have you here.
Thank
Again,
you.
The book is One Generation Away, Why Now is the Time to Restore American Freedom. I think a lot of people agree with it. Brylan Holland, thank you so much for being here. We're so proud of you.
Thank
you are
for
awesome.
having me. I appreciate it.
And now, Rita, we have Senator Kelly Loeffler on.
Yeah, here she is.
With us today is Senator Kelly Loeffler, and she is one smart lady from the great state of Georgia. She's in New York. And what accomplishments in New York? She had a great fundraiser, I understand, for Donald J. Trump. And Ms. Loeffler, Senator Loeffler, give us an update. What happened last night?
Well, great to be with you, John. We had a great night last night, and the event was hosted by former First Lady Melania Trump. My goodness, she is more beautiful and gracious than ever. It was to support the work that the log cabin Republicans are doing in support of President Trump. It's to raise money for their Road to Victory program. We raised in the aggregate over $1.4 million, and it was really hosted by former ambassador to Germany, Rick Grinnell, and many other great conservatives. Kellyanne Conway was there. It was actually held at Trump Tower in the Trump residence, which was glittering, beautiful, stunning, and high energy. So it was a really special night. The First Lady spoke. Melania is as eloquent and kind-hearted as ever, and it was a great night. And I'll tell you what, John, she's 100% in this campaign. The media loves to say that she's not part of it. She's doing her own thing. She cares very much for this campaign, for this country, for her husband, President Trump. And it was just a wonderful night. And many great patriots from across your city, New York, joined us. And then patriots from all over the country flew in to be part of it. So it was a really special night.
Well, that sounds like I missed a great night. I was supposed to be there. Bill White, that supports the log cabin Republicans, and I support the log cabin Republicans, asked me to come. But you know how schedules go. Tell us, what have you been doing since you left the Senate?
Yeah, so I left the Senate in 2021, and from that moment on, I started a group called Greater Georgia based on really grassroots mobilization, fixing the infrastructure that I saw had failed us in 2020 in Georgia. It cost the president his seat. It cost us 2 Senate Republican seats that actually ended up flipping control of the Senate. It was devastating, so I got to work, rolled up my sleeves, started building a ground game, working on coalition mobilization. So we've been reaching out to the Hispanic community, the Black community, building suburban women's outreach, and even young voters. So we're in high schools registering voters with a conservative message, which used to be Stacey Abrams in the high schools registering voters with a very liberal and radical message. And we're also on college campuses. So we're doing that along with defending election integrity. Because as we see now today, the president has issued a veto threat if the House and Senate pass the SAVE Act, which is basically to stop illegal immigrants from illegally voting in our elections. So there's tons of work to do, not just on grassroots ground game mobilization in our local communities, which you saw made such a big difference in the governor's race where Lee Zeldin almost got across the finish line. But on the election integrity side, because now that Obama group's favored candidate Biden is, kind of not, doing his best, they're going to have to resort to other means of winning. And so I'm very worried about election integrity, but I know that we're going to be able to get Trump's positive message out, and that's what we need to focus on, no matter how the Biden-Obama side of the ballot, Vice President Harris, no matter who it is on the ballot, we know that their policies don't work for the American people, and we need to stay focused on winning on our side. And that's what President Trump's doing every day with a very positive message and a 20-point platform that polls show Americans agree with.
Senator, no matter who, Republicans or Democrats, I think 90% of Americans believe in election integrity. And I am concerned that we're not going to have election integrity. What's happened in Wisconsin in the last few weeks.
Well, Wisconsin brought back the drop box, the COVID-era drop boxes. We don't have COVID with us anymore, and yet we still have COVID-era changes in our elections. Those need to be rolled back. It took a 100-page election integrity bill in Georgia to fix the unilateral changes that our Secretary of State made to make our elections unrecognizable in Georgia, to really destroy voter confidence in our elections. And every state deserves to have confidence in their elections. And so, John, I feel for you because I know New York does not have voter ID. I don't understand it. I don't think the rest of America understands why you can't have voter ID.
You need voter ID to get on an airplane in New York.
Yeah, and to pick up your tickets at a will call window at the baseball game.
Absolutely.
It's just common sense.
Well, Senator, we're out of time, but I want to thank you, Senator Kelly Loeffler from the great state of Georgia. Thank you for being in New York last night. Thank you for all the work you do. Election integrity is going to be one of the most important jobs you do. Thank you so much, and God bless America.
All right, God bless. Thank you, John.
Wow, very interesting, John. And also her pushing for election integrity. Everybody's got to feel good about the process. That was a really interesting interview. And coming up, everybody, here on Katz and Cosby, President Biden dealing with dozens of world leaders. Will he be able to articulate the message? And also, how important is it now, given everything that's going on in Europe? We're going to talk about some big breaking news that's been happening over there. That after the break with Ambassador John Bolton.
It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
With us today is Ambassador John Bolton. So many things are happening in Europe. The election in France, the elections in Great Britain, the elections, other places too. Ambassador, what the heck is going on in Europe?
Well, I think there's a lot of turmoil, but it doesn't all point in the same direction as some people would say. In the United Kingdom, the Labour Party swept to a very large majority in Parliament, turning the Conservatives out. But the Conservatives had been in for 14 years, and there is turnover in democratic governments. It's going to be interesting to see if the Labour Party can keep itself together, given the divisions it has. But they've just taken office. We'll see what happens in France. Emmanuel Macron, the president, called a snap election for Parliament, and the result was three relatively large, relatively equal-sized groups, no one of which has a majority, and forming coalitions among any two out of the three seems almost impossible. So Macron could have put France into a state of gridlock, which would make it very difficult to have much of a role outside of France itself. In Germany, the ruling coalition is in deep trouble, and there's a lot of discontent all around Europe, but it goes in a lot of different directions. I think what it means is a weaker Europe in the near term as we go into our own election in November.
Now, I understand in one of the big plazas in Paris, there was more Palestinian flags waving than French flags.
Yeah, there have been a lot of immigration problems in France, as in many other European countries. That was a big issue in the elections, but I don't think that issue is going away. And I think this is something Europe's got to confront. They haven't wanted to before. But it's a problem. Even Macron recognizes it, but now without a majority of his own party in Parliament, which he had before the election, he's going to have real trouble, I think, putting his policies into effect.
Is France doomed? Has the European community determined yet that open borders doesn't work?
No, they haven't, and it's a real problem. It's one reason the German coalition is in trouble. It's why you've got conservative governments now in places like Greece and Italy after a number of years, because the people there are concerned about it. It's something that the Europeans criticize the United States for our effort to prevent illegal immigration, but their populations see it just as much of a problem, I think, as ours do.
Ambassador Bolton, I want to ask you also about NATO, because, of course, President Biden is meeting with all these NATO leaders now, a couple dozen, and it comes on the heels where everybody's watching, what he says and what he does, cognitive skills after the debate performance. There's been some, private reports that are coming out there that world leaders are very nervous. What are you hearing? And should they be, obviously, because the world sees it, not just our allies, but sadly our adversaries.
Well, that's 100% right. And just before we started here, Biden was speaking to the opening session of the NATO summit, and he's reading a speech from a teleprompter fairly forcefully. I don't know, it'll be a 10, 15-minute speech, I suppose. He'll probably get through it okay. That doesn't mean his problem is over. I think what the American people saw during the presidential debate is something that had been speculated about for over 4 years, and it just turned out to be true that a lot of this had been covered up. And to me, it's not a question of campaigning or a question of politics. This is a question of governance. In any administration, the most precious asset is the president's time and attention. And if the president's not on duty 24/7, country's in trouble. And that's what we face. And I think the American people understand that.
By the way, did you see this report, Ambassador Bolton, where Biden went to bed early? It just came out today, because obviously it's on the heels of what's going on with the NATO meeting now, is that the German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was supposed to meet him. This was at the G7 summit. And apparently, and it was even booked early to accommodate President Biden's sleeping schedule. And, he said he wants to go to bed early. And then suddenly the Secretary of State Blinken shows up, and Scholz is like, here's the German Chancellor going, wait, I thought I was meeting with the president. And Blinken, according to this report, said, no, sorry, Biden went to bed early. That apparently this has been going on, and this was 2022, you guys. This was 2 years ago.
What, 6 o'clock?
Yeah, look, I don't know about that story, but I can tell you that this year at the G7 in Italy, Biden ducked out of a dinner that Giorgia Meloni, the head of government of Italy, hosted for the other G7 members, as is typically the case, and just didn't go to it. And it was very inadequately reported in the American press. And I asked a reporter at a prominent New York newspaper, why didn't you mention that? And the response was something like, well, he does that all the time. I mean, that is the kind of lack of coverage that for 3 years since Biden's been in the White House has helped cover up Biden not being on duty 24/7. I don't know what the Democrats are going to do. Maybe they'll jump off the cliff like lemmings because they can't bear the thought of standing up to the cult of personality they face in the Democratic Party. But if Trump wins in November, his victory speech election night should start off by saying, I want to thank Joe Biden and the Democratic Party.
Yeah, right. You're right. Craig Eaton.
Ambassador, I'm thinking that we should be saying a vote for Biden is really a vote for Kamala Harris for president, because there's no way he's going to make 4 years. I don't even know if he's going to make it till January. But
I thought Nikki Haley had a great line during her campaign for president. She said, look, in 2024, we're going to elect a female president. It's either going to be me or it's going to be Kamala Harris. Yeah.
But if we got that message out and started to scare the American people that she could be our president, I mean, that's a scary thought. We could win some of the Democrats and the independents.
Yeah, look, I think the Democrats right now are in total disarray. They benefit because I think there's a natural inclination on the part of Republicans and independents as well as Democrats not to embarrass the president with our best allies in the world at NATO attending a summit in Washington. But when this is over on Thursday, I think it's going to start up again.
Yeah, I think so for sure too. How concerned, and I guess from your perspective, Ambassador Bolton, you've been in the room with all these world leaders when there's some very sensitive discussion. How important is it to have a president who is very cognizant too? I mean, when I sit there and I look at this, I'm thinking, oh my God, if I'm Iran or Russia or all these folks, they're looking at, wow, this is an easy time.
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that Vladimir Putin took into account when he invaded Ukraine in February of 2022 was the fact he had met with Biden in the summer of 2021 in Geneva, and they had, I think, 4.5 hours together, and that's because of the translation. It takes time. Here's Vladimir Putin, experienced KGB officer, evaluating Biden in real time as he sits in front of him. And I think that interview, combined with the catastrophic withdrawal from Afghanistan, said to Vladimir Putin and the Russians, we can do what we want in Ukraine. This guy isn't going to stop us.
Yeah, and then as we heard even at the debate, President Biden said, nobody died under my watch, and then, of course, forgot the 13 U.S. service members who were killed. That was heartbreaking. Yeah. Absolutely heartbreaking. Well, Ambassador John Bolton, thank you so much for joining us. Such an important topic.
Thank you so much, John. And what do we all stand for?
Truth, justice, and the American way.
God bless America.